President Trump is really ramping up his legal battle across the country. Here's a quick breakdown. Yesterday, the campaign filed a lawsuit in Michigan alleging that credentialed election challengers were blocked from having sufficient view of the vote counting process, resulting in ineligible ballots being tallied. In Pennsylvania, the campaign filed 5 appeals on the Philadelphia County Board of Elections decision, saying incomplete ballots were counted. And today in Arizona, a judge heard oral arguments regarding a current lawsuit alleging Maricopa County poll workers wrongly rejected votes. And that's only the surface. Let's bring in someone who's on the forefront of this legal battle, Trump 2020 senior legal advisor and personal attorney to President Trump, Jenna Ellis. Jenna, thank you so much. Great to see you.
Great to see you too, Buck. Thanks for having me.
All right. Start with what is, you think, the most important of these challenges? What state is it in, and what are the allegations?
Yeah, so of course, every legal vote should count and should count fairly and accurately. And so that's why you see these widespread lawsuits across the country to ensure that. So that's the uniform goal of all of these lawsuits. But really, the most important thing, I think, is currently in Pennsylvania and in Michigan and likely a few other states where we are going to be challenging to not certify any of the election results until we know that they are fair and they're not fraudulent. And so right now you do have recounts that will be going on in Georgia and Wisconsin, so they are not anywhere close to certifying those results. But in Pennsylvania, we actually got just a couple of hours ago a really significant victory where a judge there held that the Secretary of State cannot simply unilaterally change election law. She is not the legislature. And so what the judge held is that she gave incorrect legal guidance to election officials to count late ballots that arrived after the deadline on Election Day. And so that's a really significant victory. Of course, Justice Alito had already required through his order that came from the Supreme Court that the late ballots had to be segregated. So now the question is, can we actually determine which ballots were late? Were they segregated? And if not, what does that mean in terms of the legal remedy?
How many ballots are we thinking may be at issue here?
That we don't know yet, and I don't want to speculate on the numbers, but certainly a significant amount, especially when you look at the margins of what's going on in Pennsylvania and you look at everything all together. And so when you look at, of course, you know, whether this is 1,000 ballots, whether this is 100,000, whether this is 1,000,000 ballots, this goes to the integrity of Pennsylvania. And of course, their 20 electoral votes absolutely matter. And if we can't get to a fair and accurate count and the election results there are irredeemably compromised, then it will fall to the court or the state legislature to fashion a correct and constitutionally correct outcome. And I'd point out as well, Buck, that our constitutional system is so great that when the founders adopted this as our system, they built in methods to make sure that if elections were compromised, if there was any kind of corruption or foreign influence, that we had these safeguards to not disenfranchise our voters. I'd encourage everyone to read Alexander Hamilton's Federalist 68 that specifically talks about the selection of the United States president and why it is so important that the Electoral College and those slate of electors have several different ways constitutionally of being selected. Of course, that's currently through the vote and the will of the people. But if that is compromised, then the state legislature under Article 2 can select the manner by which they actually appoint those electors. So we have some constitutional safeguards there that if any of these states, including Pennsylvania, are irredeemably compromised, we have constitutional solutions.
So, Jenna, tell me about these affidavits that are often talked about now by people who are involved in either transporting ballots or counting ballots that are sworn affidavits under penalty of perjury that claim that people saw straight up fraud, not just irregularities or problems in the system, that there are people intentionally doing things they weren't supposed to do in the system. Is the campaign looking at these affidavits? Have you been able to review any of them? And are you expecting there to be more?
Yeah, so we're still getting reports almost by the minute of people who are willing to sign affidavits. We're reviewing all of this. We've, of course, seen a lot of, and this isn't just reports. This isn't just, kind of this minimized, there is no fraud. There is no widespread fraud like the mainstream media tries to allege. They're trying to just coronate Joe Biden and just forget that this system of legal challenges, of recounts, of course, is fair and appropriate to make sure we get to the correct legal outcome. And they're just wanting to minimize this. So, we have allegations like in Michigan, for example, when we filed that lawsuit on Monday to ask that the results not be certified, because we're not seeing just irregularities. Like you said, we are seeing outright fraud. And for the mainstream media to simply dismiss this and say, oh, there's no proof of that, they are basically accusing these people that are signing affidavits under oath of a felony and of perjury. And last time I checked, nobody in the mainstream media has stepped down from their anchor or contributor position and has joined the Michigan federal bench. So until that time, I don't care what the court of public opinion says. This matters what an actual court of justice and equity says.
A lot of people are asking, Jenna, when will we see proof of fraud? And, last night on Tucker's show on Fox, he laid out what I've been talking about for days. I spoke to a friend of mine, Sean Parnell, on this show earlier in the week, who says that he knows in his race, it's only one congressional race, but it was an important one, very important to him, that there were dead people who voted. Is there any explanation? I mean, Tucker talked about this last night on his show. We've seen lots of reports on this, only from some parts of the media, of course. Is there any explanation for this? And when are we going to have an actual accounting for what seems to be fraud that's already proven?
Well, yeah, and it is. And this is why it's so important to have our day in court, and that the court can actually look at the evidence that we have and that we have alleged in our complaint. And also that's why it's so incredibly important to not certify false results. And so, for the mainstream media to just simply ignore this and say that there is no proof. No, we have all of the videos that Facebook and big tech has been trying, and Twitter have been trying to censor. We have, the video evidence, the picture evidence, and sworn affidavits. And so this is not about the credibility of the evidence. We have that. It's about making sure to fashion a remedy that is constitutionally appropriate to get to a legitimate outcome. We are far past, oh, this is simply an allegation. There's absolutely proof, and it's just a matter of whether or not the court will step in and say it matters to tell the states that they cannot certify the results until we fashion an appropriate remedy.
So that's what I was going to ask you next. What should people expect here as the timeline for, let's say, between now and the end of the month, when some of these states will have already supposed to have certified their results? Is the campaign's legal position right now that they want judges to grant, what is it, an injunction to prevent the certification until these issues can be sufficiently addressed?
Yes, and if you look at the prayer for relief at the end of the Michigan lawsuit and the Pennsylvania lawsuit, and again, there are recounts that will happen in Wisconsin and Georgia, and so after those recounts, if we need to, we will file for injunctions there. But the position of the campaign in these states is that we need an injunction to stop the states from certifying results until we know that those results are accurate. And this should matter to all Americans, that we don't certify false results. And this matters that every legal vote counts. This is not about just the allegation that we're trying to simply get President Trump reelected. That was what the campaign was for prior to Election Day. Post-Election Day, we're no longer in campaign mode. We are now in legal mode to make sure that this is a fair and legitimate election. And President Trump has said this, and I speak to him quite frequently these days, and he is committed to making sure that this election is legitimate and that the American people can rely on the outcome. And he knows that this isn't just about his election. It's not just about 2020. It's about every future election, because we have to keep free and fair elections in this country. Otherwise, our constitutional republic is basically gone.
Jenna, thanks so much for joining, sharing your expertise, and thanks for staying in this fight. We appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me.
Hey Team Buck, just want to say thanks so much for watching The First on YouTube. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more great content from The First, please click that subscribe button.